The DS and the PSP came out within a year of each other, and they've been compared so much over the years. But I really want to take a modern lens to it. What can you do today that might make you buy one over the other? Each device has multiple different models you can choose from, and which one is the best value. So let's just jump right into this. The PSP has been out for, as I mentioned, a very long time at this point. And the homebrew scene has really come together and developed so many applications, modding tools, and stuff to really make full use of the PSP. I installed custom firmware on my PSP all the way back in 2016, allowing me to originally play Game Boy Advance games, which was something I was really interested in doing at the time. It was one of the first mobile devices that I had that I can upload my own videos or backed up movies or anything like that fairly easily, just through plugging it into my computer. So the PSP holds a special place in my heart as one of my favorite gaming handhelds of all time. Some of the things that you can do with modded firmware are play backed up PSP games, allowing you to have access to all the possible PSP games you could ever want on your PSP. Having native support for PS1 games is also awesome. Being able to play any backed up PS1 games natively is just such an amazing thing, just to be able to have native support for PS1 games, which is something Sony really was pushing at the time as one of the major selling points. Even on the PlayStation phone, that was the thing that they were really pushing at the time. After installing custom firmware, you can download stuff like RetroArch, allowing you to play all the way up till sort of that PS1 generation of games. You can't really do N64 all that well, which is something that some people have talked about before in my comments, and it is important to bear in mind that you can't emulate everything, and it doesn't pass the Yoshi's Island test, and it doesn't allow you to play 100% of all these games, but it does play most of them fairly well, and allows you to have, like I said, full support for PlayStation 1 games without any emulation. It allows you to play Game Boy Advance games, NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis. Basically, all your 8 and 16-bit consoles should be able to play very well on this device. The last kind of game are homebrew ports. People have made homebrewed versions of Minecraft, Nazi zombies, even Splunky, albeit the original version, but Splunky nonetheless. And the device is also very easy to hack, so it's a fairly easy setup to get going and get all this stuff downloaded pretty quickly. Moving on to the DS. The DS has been around for a long time also, and I recently made a video talking about the stuff you can do with a Nintendo DS Lite nowadays. And same thing goes for this device. You can emulate pretty much all the way up until the 8 and 16-bit console generations. Can't do PS1, super can't do N64, but this device does require you to make a purchase in order to start playing emulators on this. You need to buy something called an R4 cartridge, which is an added expense that doesn't exist for the PSP. But the R4 cartridge does have the benefit of also working on Nintendo 3DS's. So if you ever wanted to bring that sort of whole emulation setup that you have going on your DS and bring it to your 3DS, you won't have any issues. The DS also doesn't pass the Yoshi's Island test, which is pretty common for devices that are so low powered and literally 20 years old. So we are asking a lot of these two devices to be able to emulate up to N64, which is something that we only were able to start doing well cheaply like 2 years ago. Included though with the R4 cartridge, you can upload and play backed up Nintendo DS games, which is pretty nice, so you don't have to carry a box around with you or a bag full of Nintendo DS games, which that is easier to carry around than a bunch of UMD games from the PSP, which are quite literally spinning discs. Unfortunately, the DS doesn't have a particularly large homebrewing community, mostly doing just fun sort of like image displaying apps, clocks, overclocking software, and like video playing applications. There isn't a particularly large homebrewing scene in developing, ports or anything really like that. The DS also has a closable clamshell form factor so you can protect the screen, but that does mean the DS does have an overall smaller screen. Doesn't matter if it has two. The PSP has a much larger screen, even especially given won't be able to play very nicely on that. but the DS doesn't even play in 64 games, so I can't really think of any reason why you would want an analog stick on the DS. If you're maybe playing Mario 64 for the DS, maybe, but then just get a 3DS. Unfortunately, the DS doesn't have a particularly large homebrewing community, mostly doing just fun, sort of like image displaying apps, clocks, overclocking software, and like video playing applications. There isn't a particularly large homebrewing scene in developing, ports or anything really like that. Moving on to value for the money. Both devices can be had around $90 to $120. DS being a little bit cheaper and the PSP being a little bit more expensive, especially if you're considering maybe getting one of the different models of the PSP, maybe getting the PSP Go, which can be had all the way up to like $230, which is a crazy price for that device. Just get a Vita at that rate. And there's other kinds of PSPs you can get, the 1000, 2000, 3000, and Street models, which all offer slightly different screens, outputs, and varying quality of build. I personally really like my PSP 3000, but I've heard the 2000 is pretty good, and the PSP Street having the nice outside finish, but might not be fully feature complete in comparison. I never personally had a PSP Street that was exclusively originally sold in Europe, so the only way us here in the States could have possibly gotten this back then was if we ordered it and got it like imported or something, or if you bought one on the secondhand market. The DS definitely has a lot less of other models. The main topic is the DS Lite and the original launch DS, so you really have two models to pick from. I personally really like the DS Lite. It just feels really nice, very premium. There's a ton of different variants out there for you to get your hands on. Maybe you want the cool, Legend of Zelda one they did, or maybe you want one of the many colors that came out. I personally have a red one right now, but I originally had a nice midnight blue. Now that we've talked about value in all the different variants of each of these consoles, which one do I think is the better choice? Well, the PSP, in my opinion, is probably going to be the best choice, especially if you're looking for something that does capable homebrew, amazing emulation, and it can come at an affordable price. The PSP, while being a little bit more expensive than the DS, I feel like it's a great budget option for anyone out there who's looking for a high quality, physical appearance and a pretty good emulation experience, especially if you want to stay under $120, so you don't feel like you have to buy something a little bit better like a Vita, which can cost around $200, or 3DS or something like that if you're looking at official hardware. I recommend the PSP over the DS for the pure fact of how much community support the PSP has. The DS simply just isn't really built for homebrew and emulation and stuff. It just doesn't feel very comfortable. In having to purchase a separate DS cartridge, the R4, having to buy that to do any of your emulation or homebrewing is a pretty stiff barrier for some people. Even if the R4 cartridge is around $15-20, that is still a barrier that some people might not want to overcome. Maybe that's just the maxing out their budget buying the device on its own. I feel like the PSP offers the simplest setup and get up and go sort of process compared to the DS. The DS requires a little bit more effort to really get it to what you want it to do. Not to say the DS is a bad choice, it just in comparison to the PSP definitely is lacking in a few areas when it comes to modern emulation standards. But hey, I hope this video helps some of you out there. Some of you were looking for a PSP or a DS. I hope this video really helps you narrow down your decision. Leave a comment down below on which one you have or which one you're going to get, and if this video helped. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All that other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.